Look, I think if you've been Chancellor of the Exchequer, most people watching will pay their tax, pay AYE like everybody else. And for them, £4.3 million, which is what's alleged, and a penalty alongside that's a staggering amount of money. And I don't think it's acceptable, really, to be careless with money that pays for our teachers, our nurses, our doctors, whilst being not just a government minister, but Chancellor of the Exchequer. And so for all of those reasons, I think, and this is not a Labour or a Conservative thing, in any previous government, the individual would have stood down or been sacked, frankly.
I mean, the investigation's been launched and you want to see it run its course, I presume? Or do you want him to go now? Do you want to circumvent
well, look,
Magnus?
I think notwithstanding the investigation, and I'm glad we've got an investigation to get to the bottom of what happened, because it's still a bit murky and because the Prime Minister has said one thing and then we find out something else. But regardless, this amount of money, when you've been Chancellor of the Exchequer and you say you've been careless, despite the fact that offshore trusts have been set up in Gibraltar and all the rest of it, I'm sorry, you really ought to resign or have been sacked.
Why is he not resigning then? I mean, what's your opinion as to why he is clinging on to this? Because as you rightly point out, it seems to be a bit of a distraction at the moment. What's your sense as to what's going on here?
Well, I think that we should be dealing with the cost of living crisis. We should be dealing with health and the fact that teachers are now going on strike. These are the important issues that certainly my constituents care about. So, of course, it's a huge distraction. But what we've seen time and time again over the last 13 years is that when they've done wrong, government ministers remain in office, they hold on, and then there's a hue and cry. It goes on and on for days, dominates the news, when we should be dealing with far more serious issues. And I'm afraid we're here again. I take no pleasure in that situation, but here we are again.
Would you be happy publishing your tax affairs?
Well, look, I mean, I think if Parliament reaches a settlement where all MPs have to publish their tax affairs, then fine. I'm like most of the public. You know, it comes out of my salary. And I don't get much of a say in it, so I'm happy to publish my tax affairs if that's the determination that Parliament reaches.
Now, you know, in the past few weeks, we've been running a programme on here, a project, the Westminster Accounts, and it's the first chance we've got to speak to you about it since we've been running the project. So since 2019, you've declared £347,000 in extra income, and the full list of that income I think we've got on screen now, and you got a donation of some £50,000 from a George Brown. I mean, it's all there, it's all in the public domain. There's no implication that anything wrong has been done. But who is George Brown?
Look, the situation is this, that when you're in the opposition and other colleagues in senior positions in the oppositions have received donations, and actually they've received bigger donations than me, you receive those donations to support you in your role. The truth is, in opposition, there's not a lot of money to support the researchers and staff that help me to be the best Shadow Foreign Secretary. And so, yes, of course, there are individuals who are supportive of what we're trying to do, and they fund your political endeavours. That's right across the board. I don't think it's fair to pick on particular individuals. The names are there public. Others can do that work. There are a number of people that support me and other colleagues. There's nothing murky about that. The whole point of declaring it is to make it public.
Yeah, but you could tell me who he is, couldn't you, Mr. Lammy? You could say.
Well, we don't. His name is public. There it is. What I'm
we
not
don't know what he does and where he gets his money.
I'm not going to pick on a particular individual. I don't think it's fair on them. But what I would say is we're not in a situation in our country where all political activity is funded by the taxpayer. Some of it does come from private donations. The important thing is that it's open, it's transparent, people can see where it comes from, and it comes from people who are voters in our own country.
And you know, you will have come for criticism as well for what some people would describe as having another job with the LBC show. I mean, do you think that's a fair criticism? I mean, isn't being an MP work enough?
I think there is a debate. It came up because of the Owen Paterson affair around MPs who are taking sizable amounts of money to lobby on behalf of a company. It came up also during the whole procurement and PPE debacle in the pandemic. I don't think that anyone thinks I'm lobbying on behalf of LBC. I have a show. on a Sunday morning when I probably should be at church, and I'm putting issues of current affairs. Lots of MPs over many years have done bits of broadcasting.
So you have no problem with the extra work that you do on that Sunday morning when you should be at
I don't,
should be at
but I
church?
do think it's right to have a debate about second jobs, and I do think we need to tighten up the rules. And if we determine that MPs can no longer get paid to be broadcasters, or shouldn't write books, or shouldn't be doctors, or those sorts of things, then those will be the new rules. But it's absolutely right to have that debate, because the lobbying scandals and the procurement crisis during PPE was totally unacceptable.
Well, just on that, then, Lord Kerslake said that with any new incoming government, he would like to see a change in the way that government sort of works with the civil service and a change in some of these procedures. I mean, would you call for that? Would that be something that you might put in your future manifesto?
Well, if I look at the FCDO and you hear about the bullying that has gone on, apparently, whilst Dominic Raab has been Foreign Secretary. Of course, we've got to get back to a situation where we treat our civil servants in the appropriate manner. And again, yes, of course, happy to look at how we set up arrangements so that people aren't coming to work feeling intimidated or bullied.